Hey, I just finished um, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker MSQ. So we'll definitely have spoilers, um, but I want to talk about how it relates to my life. A lot of the concepts that are put forward are things that I have thought about, um, struggled with, or tried to incorporate into my life. And they did an excellent job of that. And so I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what it means and what it means for me and the people in my life. Um, First, it's hard to classify it. It is an MMO. Um, it tells a story as well as having game mechanics and MMO mechanics. And the way that is integrated is near genius. Um, the bosses, the mechanics, the classes are all told within the story. And the MMO portion of it is an extension of that story. Um, and I think it was just exceptionally well done. Um, the closest thing that I can compare it to is probably an epic um, fantasy science fiction. And I just finished it. The credits rolled. I did the last goodbye scene with everyone. And so I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. Now, I had beaten um, the last group boss last night, and as soon as I did it, um, the game crashed. So um, I was probably going to finish it last night. Um, so I had a small amount of time to sleep on things that I had saw. Um, but when I woke up this morning, I wanted to finish it. I can't say it's the best yet. Um, the previous title holder I would put to The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan with an asterisk. Um, as a background, this was when I was growing up, and Robert Jordan, the closest nowadays would be George R. R. Martin, Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones. So way back then, when I was a youngin and growing up, Robert Jordan was writing the Wheel of Time series. Each book just thick, thick, thick. Um, and it would go years between him writing the books. So imagine your favorite book, uh, reading it, wondering what's going to happen for years. It's not like, Netflix binging or even waiting 1 week for the next episode to come out. You're waiting years. Unfortunately, during that time, Robert Jordan died. Um, so he never finished it. He left a lot of notes, including my understanding the ending, um, which is almost just a book upon itself. But um, Brandon Sanderson um, finished the series for him. Um, so there's an asterisk there because the original author didn't finish it, so we can't truly know. We can get the spirit, we can get a lot of direction, and even a lot of his own words that were left. And that always struck me. We never know when our last moment is going to be, most of us. Leaving that legacy, what's important to you for others to finish is important to me. And that has always struck me. And even more so in recent years. But I consider The Wheel of Time to be the greatest epic fantasy that I have ever had the pleasure of reading. And I, in total, I couldn't tell you. It's probably my most read thing. Um, each book probably 5 or 6 times. Some of the books much more because, I would reread it typically before a new book came out. So the first few books I may have read, you know, 10 or more times. Um, and you almost have to. I'm terrible with names, and in that story, there are, I dare to say, thousands of characters, um, names of places. You need to keep your index open, keep your map open when you're reading it. Um, it was truly grand and lives up to the term epic. I believe this competes with that and should be put in the same category. Um, I haven't read a lot of visual novels, so obviously it compares to something like that, plus the gameplay aspect of it. Um, I think you could probably, it's hard. You might be able to split MMOs into quote story MMOs or something like that, but this should probably become the foundation of what future MMOs strive for. I guess what I can do is um, this is my collection of screenshots. Sometimes I thought they looked cool, or sometimes I thought there was something funny in them. So I guess we can have that go. There will be spoilers. I haven't cleaned this out. Um, I sometimes there's some crafting ones. Is there a way to? No. Okay, just let it go. Um, Sometimes there's crafting ones that I go and delete. I just use to save space. But um, the game is a masterpiece. There are, of course, a lot of things I don't like, and I'm always happy to talk about those. Um, the big thing in this expansion, Endwalker, and the culmination of this story, I guess I need to back up. My apologies for the jarringness of this, but I played this game when it first came out. Um, it was a disaster. It was awful. Um, is there no way for me to edit the speed? I don't know if there is. Viewing. I do not know how to do it. Boom, boom, boom. Oh well. Um, so I played it when it first came out. It was a disaster. Um, to say it was boring is an understatement. There was nothing to do. It The world was largely empty. Not necessarily the people, but um, even for its time, it felt dated. I swear you couldn't even like jump. Um, it, and so they did something as a company, um, a little unique and unheard of, and then they admitted their mistakes and they basically redid it. And it cost them, I don't know how much, a lot, but it cost them me because I stopped playing. I would occasionally get the emails, hey, here you go, here's some free time or whatever. But it left such an impact on me, and I love games, that I just simply ignored it. The one there I really like. I try to always catch me side-eyeing Alphino because I sort of dislike the character or did dislike him. So every time I had a chance to side-eye him, I was trying to take a screenshot. But um, yeah, so I didn't pay the game any mind till I want to say it was last year. Um, but they told an incredible story, and I'm happy that I came back and was able to go through it. And it took me about a month of playtime to finish Shadowbringers before Endwalker came out, and I, for the most part, enjoyed it a lot. Um, for Endwalker and for the culmination of the story, they dance around um, the philosophy of it, and that is nihilism. They never name it. They describe it in about every way possible. Um, so for whatever reason, they've chose to purposely not use that name. Um, and I've noticed one other glaring missing thing, if you can call it, but missing label. But nihilism is a concept, belief, if you will, that exists in our real world. And no small number of minds have become trapped by what feels and seems like its inevitable conclusions that nothing matters. Um, when you look out into the emptiness of space, the vast distances, and even the possible endings of that we believe might happen, all would lead someone to think that in the end, what we do doesn't matter. This is a trap. Um, I fault no one for falling or having fallen into this trap. It's somewhere I got stuck for a long time. Also, it's alluring. It seems final, and many parts of it seem irrefutable, as if they are simply laws of nature. To ignore them is ignorance. Um, but I don't believe that's true, and the story they tell is that they don't believe that that's true. Um, Philosophy is something that I have a passion for, but not in the same way my other passions. Typically, when I have a passion, I can study something without end. Only sleep stops me. Um, I will go to the ends of the earth to find and explore my passions. But philosophy is different in that I know it's a passion because I feel the attraction to it. But as soon as I open a book, I just want to fall asleep. I cannot take classes on it. I cannot read on it for any length of time. And everything I do is basically forced. Okay, I'm going to sit down and read this book or read this chapter. I have given up on few books in my life. I would guess that I've read maybe well over 10,000, 15 going to 20 maybe. And only the tiniest number, we're talking an absolute handful, have I ever put down. And I went through War and Peace with a dictionary when I was young. I loathe reading philosophy, but I love it with a passion because it tries to answer the greatest questions or find answers or find solutions to the greatest questions that we have when we look up and out and we ask ourselves and each other. And perhaps that is the passion more than the study of it, but I make an effort. But there are some that I simply could not finish, that simply put me to sleep. or I found too boring. Um, so I am not an expert in philosophy. I don't pretend to be. I just like the idea of it, I guess. Um, I personally know people who have become trapped by nihilism. Um, my half brother Jacob, in particular, now I haven't spoken to him in some time, but he, the last I knew of him, he could not move past this. Um, I believe there are answers to nihilism. I don't know academically, but the answer I have found for myself that I was able to move past it is existentialism. That while it may be true that ultimately things do not matter on that scale, on the cosmic scale, say we are never able to leave our sun for whatever reason, and our sun either swallows the earth or, more likely uh, burns out and becomes a dim husk of what it was, and is not capable of supporting life as we know it. Or even further, or something happens, sucked into a black hole, or even the heat death, um, or as described in the game, um, uh, dark energy, dark matter, um, where even through long time, stars burn out, no new stars are created, um, the energy spreads out, even black holes begin to dissipate, um, and everything continues to spread out. You cannot see other stars, other galaxies, and you are alone until even the atoms themselves begin to break apart. I haven't caught up in recent years, but there are other things. The big contraction, gravitational pull is king. Everything comes back in, and perhaps even new universes are born. Or black holes are the parents of universes. But even if you take that as nothing matters, if tomorrow an asteroid crashes, kills us all, even if you take that, the answer, I believe, to nihilism isn't to look on that scale, um, but what matters to us, the individuals, the people around us. Yes, your life may not have an effect at the end of the universe, or even our planet or our star, worst case. But it matters to those around you. What you do matters to everyone connected to you. And that refutes nihilism, I think, in a way that I was able to move past it. And I tried to tell my brother this, but I don't know if this is a thing you can shortcut. Maybe it has to be processed or they have to understand it in their own way. But for me, it's just easy. I see someone drowning in despair. Like, hey, that is something to worry about, but I think life can be improved. Life is worth it, even through struggle, um, for what you can do for people around you. So the game does talk about that in its own way. And I want to commend them for giving us a philosophy lesson in a way that didn't put me to sleep. Sometimes there were parts of the story that made me sleepy, so I don't want to get caught in a hypocritical statement there, but for those of you who didn't skip it, for those of you who thought about it and how it relates to real life, they sat us down in a class and they gave us lessons. And um, I commend them for that. They did an excellent job of reaching me in an area that I traditionally find, I can't believe I'm going to say this, boring, because I do not get bored. Um, so great job. I believe it will go down as a masterpiece, um, and set the standard for its genre from here on out. And the game has its limitations as an engine, as a MMO, um, but the story itself is just magnificent. And I am thrilled and happy to have been able to go through it. Um, it inspires me to do better in my own life where I've had failings, days where I've been mentally exhausted. I've found relief uh, in playing, um, in telling the story with the creators. And I was incredibly pleased, to see myself in the end credits with my name, as part of the story. And I don't think it's just Japanese culture that exhibits the respect that they give their players. It's shown in every way. From the very beginning, when they admitted to their mistake, it was my failing that I did not give them the second chance sooner. Um, and I realize that, and that's helpful in my own life when nowadays, especially, it's very easy to give up on people, to ghost them, to block them, to not worry about their troubles. Um, our world is ever more complex, ever more dangerous, ever more stressful and difficult, and it does not show any signs of becoming easier. And as I'm prone to shrinking my circle of friends through sometimes no real fault of my own, but on purpose a lot of times, um, it is a reminder that it is okay to share the pain of others and hope that they share yours. And that can be a great source of strength and relief for everyone. Um, I noticed in the game the other big thing that they really shy away from is love. And I found this odd because when I was thinking about possible endings, what can overcome despair, um, love was one of those things that I thought maybe they might go in for. Um, but you notice in the game when you play through it, there's not a lot of love. They talk a little bit about it, they dance around it, they hint around it, but it's never brought as a forefront theme. And it's almost painfully avoided. Um, the Moonbreeder and Urianger, um, it just highlights that, like, yeah, they dance so much around it, you just want to throw in the screen, but they loved each other. Like, it's okay to say it. Um, so these are conscious choices, and I'm not gonna nitpick that one very much, but it leaves the question of why they so painfully avoid using certain words or topics, like the nihilism. They just dance around it. You obviously know what they're talking about. And love is the other thing they dance around. So just, I don't know, curious. Um, Excellent, well done. I will need time to say it's better than the Wheel of Time. I haven't watched the new television series. It's on my list of things to do, so I will probably do that soon. But I've kind of wanted a few more episodes to get out. I'm also watching Dexter, and so when I was young, that was the thing. You watched your weekly television shows. You had to be there on the right time. If you missed it, be months. We didn't have no internet to go and watch episodes or watch it on our phone. So it's hard for me to get back into weekly shows. So I really try to limit myself. The Dexter's, I didn't make the mistake I made with Final Fantasy. I gave Dexter the second chance right away, and they're not disappointing. The ending to the first Dexter, if Game of Thrones had not happened the way it ended, Dexter would probably be the number one mistake ending of a television series. Probably. That's a bold statement, but I'm going to make it. But Game of Thrones, obviously, I have never witnessed such a layup turn into such a disaster. I just, oh, it's so painful to think of. Everyone just on needles waiting for the next thing to come out, and then to the point where you don't even want to see any of the merchandise or be reminded of how awful it was. But um, I know there's more to Final Fantasy coming up. Um, my personal wish is that they end on this high note. They work on a new engine. They modernize this. Um, and I would be happy to hear the next story they put in. Um, I love Final Fantasy games. I Now I know there's some number difference between Japanese and American, so um, I'll do my best to differentiate that. The one I played the most, I feel like I played all of the ones before 10. The one I played the most of, the most times, was 3. And that's when um, I want to. Can you do this? Final Fantasy 3? Can you spoil that? I don't know. The one with Kefka, and the game is split into before and after that, and then afterwards your party is all split, and you go about and find them. I I don't know for sure, but I felt like 14, this one, the last expansion, Shadowbringers, was modeled off of that story. I thought it was the high point of the story, and I felt like if you could break down the formula of that story, it would match with like Final Fantasy 3. Like I noticed a lot of small similarities between the story from the perspective of your character and the situations that seem like really similar. Like they just said, okay, let's create a mathematical formula for these Final Fantasy games, especially ones that were popular, and then let's use that same formula and create a story and allow players to play it out through an MMO for Shadowbringers. And um, so I'm curious if that's really what happened. If they have a secret formula now that they know what will work from a writing and game perspective. That's the way it felt for me. Um, the other one being important, I believe it was 7, um, and that is where you have a character that also profoundly affected me, and that was the character of Eris or Aerith, depending on translations. And that name stuck with me for, well, you could say the rest of my life. Um, in that game, it is a beautiful girl that you rescue. And no matter what you do, she gets killed. And it is very rare, even in Final Fantasy games, for one of your main party to be killed off. Everyone, I remember growing up, everyone was looking for cheats, looking for secret ways around it, looking for ways to save her. And you couldn't. Um, that story has always stuck with me and became profound for me. So there you go. Um, my friends have not finished the story. One of them is a skipper, and one of them skipped Shadowbringers. I don't, I don't know how. It takes a certain amount of deviance to even suggest such a thing. I'm not saying it should be criminal, but maybe there's a small fine or something. Um, Stormblood, I did not like. Uh, I don't remember any memorable memorable character. The gameplay of it I enjoyed more than the story, the dungeons and the trials. Um, Shadowbringers, of course, a masterpiece. Um, and I was so afraid that Endwalker would be terrible simply because Shadowbringers was the best, and you couldn't be better than the best, so it has to be worse. I If they were separate experiences, I would rate Shadowbringers better. And that is because of only one thing, which we'll talk about what I did not like in Endwalker. And this might be a little biased, but I have a feeling that I am not alone in this. And spoilers, Garlemald is the worst zone, the worst experience. And storytelling, I give it an F. If I was grading a paper and someone submitted that story to me, on its own, as a short story, I might be okay. But connected with anything else, I think it fails. Um, and I'll try to talk about each of them. The first, the setting, Garlemald, I have no problem with it. Happy to go there and see things. But good snowy wasteland, blizzard wastelands have been done to death. I don't find them appealing. There was nothing visually interested unless you want to see an apocalyptic wasteland of snow. I Gameplay wise, I have never let me think about this. Yeah, I have never had a worst experience. Um, the Girl in Green and its follow up, The Boy in Blue, or Girl in Green Part 2. I failed Girl in Green 8 times. I failed Boy in Blue 3 times. And I was expecting Boy in Blue. I was expecting shenanigans and trickery, and they delivered it, which made me even more mad. It's as if they knew how bad it was, and they still put it in there to fuck with you. And that there are very few times in my experience with this game that I have felt disrespected. That was one of them. Um, when you're doing Girl in Green, you have to follow someone and they don't. They're not supposed to quote see you. It's been memed on. You can have these giant ass mounts. You're in a snowy white wasteland where anything different color sticks out. Um, I play a small character, so it's almost sort of believable in a way, maybe. Um, it's ridiculous as a setting, as a storytelling device, and the actual gameplay mechanics is just worse. You're given no indication of how far back you can be. It's all pass fail, so you have to do it again. So it breaks immersion in that you failed the story and that they don't give you an alternate happening to the story. They just say start over. Um, that's always bothersome to me. Um, and the fact that you don't know what is okay to hide behind, how far they can get from you, how far you can get to them. Um, I don't know who approved this. No disrespect for the people who put in hard work to make a game that we can play. But good Lord, whoever came up with this, you are a sadist. There is a place for you in our world. Please do not, please find another way to funnel your passion than the suffering of me and others. That is my humble request. Um, it is awful, beyond awful. Um, there is also in the zone the Thancred um, duty. Now, this is where my bias comes in, and I know other people are not this way, or not a lot of people. I despise playing other characters. I despise it near infinitely more when I am forced to do it and it's not optional. I have no interest in doing it. It is difficult for me. I have problems learning new characters. I primarily play one class, and when I do go to learn another class, it takes me a long time. Probably comes from my perfectionist roots where I want to understand everything, and it's numbers, position, what you need to be doing, what's better to do. These are all things that I focus on when I have a character, and I primarily like to play support and healers, and to force me out of that against my will is something that I truly despise, and there is no fun in it. And if you give me that in a game or force me to do it, you are working from so far behind. I have yet to ever see it succeed. I don't think there's been one time in my life where I've ever been like, you know what, that wasn't so bad, or you know what, I enjoyed that. It's never happened. I'm not saying it couldn't. Um, I'm saying you probably, if you want me to enjoy it, you probably should never do it. Especially when I don't know it's coming. I don't know the reason for it. You just don't do it. I know not everyone's like that, so that's where my bias comes in. Which, if you've lasted through that and you've done Garlemald, you're gonna know the next thing that comes up. I have to imagine it is probably the most controversial, most stressful duty in the game. I I do not believe that it is coincidence that all of these happen in the same zone. And we're not even done. There's one there's one more after this. I refuse to believe it's a coincidence. There must be someone, a sadist, in charge of that zone whose ideas were allowed or forced onto other people to make it can't be a coincidence that everything I dislike happens to be in this zone. But the duty, of course, I'm referring to is when you get taken out of your body and swapped to a common soldier. We'll come back to the story in a second. and you are powerless, you are weak, and you struggle, and you have no clear objective, and you're timed. And if you fail, you start over. Now, I was very fortunate in that in my wanderings, I figured out vaguely what was likely I had to do. Now, I had to backtrack a whole bunch a couple times, um, but I found the fuel tank first, and then I was like, well, this is awfully, it's pointy at something, and so I figured there was another Magitech armor, and I just kind of zoomed around till I found that, and I was correct. But people who were not that lucky, who went the other way, or didn't discern an objective, um, would have failed it, or ran into too many mobs, or timed out, or well, this is just the worst one. And I say again, there's a sadist somewhere in there. Please do not suffer us anymore. Go funnel your passion elsewhere. They put a quick time event on you. And when I was finally done with what I thought it was done with the duty, I had put down my mouse, my keyboard, picked up a glass of water, and all of a sudden, QuickTime event pops up. If I had spilled my water on my computer, if I had failed it, if I had not gotten to my mouse in time, I would have failed it, had to restart it all again. You, if I were creating a game, inducing rage, especially unnecessary rage in others, would not be a goal. And if the gameplay forces that on your players, I can't imagine that to be a rewarding experience unless you are a sadist. Um, so it was awful. Fortunately, I did it on the first time. I understand the panic feeling of failure, of stress. The crawling thing was good, except I didn't know. There was no indication where it's going to be okay. You're left to think you got to crawl all that way. And if you're paying attention, crawling like that, you're not going to make it. So you're looking for, did I miss a stand up button? Did I mess up? Did I fail it? You're wondering all these things that are gameplay related and not story related. They're UI related. And I think that is a terrible failure. Um, I hope that they could find a way to induce um, and immerse you in the story without that um, feeling, that out of game feeling that comes with it. I did not appreciate that. I turned off the game and I stopped for a while to calm down to be able to go back and do it, to keep going. So I, at that point in the story, was ready to rate the expansion a complete failure. The question in my mind in that time was Garlemald, is Garlemald the worst expansion, or worst zone, or is Garlemald the worst zone so far? And that thought, that doubt, really took over for a while. Um, but because of Shadowbringers, because of the good faith, I kept going. Um, the story, I don't understand the. This is tricky. The story felt like dead ends, maybe is the best way to describe it. While great in theory, hey, here's the question. What happens when a soul is taken out of a body? Where does someone's strength come from in this game universe? Does it come from their body, their mind, or their soul? This is a beautiful topic to explore in this universe. I, that seems really great, but it's not brought up anymore. It just dead ends. Where does it go? Um, you are genuinely afraid when the bad guy takes over your body and goes toward your friends. And that part was good storytelling. That part gave me emotions. I felt it. I wanted to save them. Um, I wanted to let them know what was happening. I wanted Yushtola to see that this person she should have. I wanted to see her because in Shadowbringers she describes your being able to see your soul, your ether as this, you know, lighthouse, this enormous beacon compared to other players, so much that it almost blinds her in her blind state. Um, so the fact that she would ever be confused is a lapse in storytelling. You know, she sort of mentions it. Oh, maybe I'm tired, or that doesn't. This is not the same way she describes it in Shadowbringers. So that was very disappointing. I thought it was a moment for her character to come through to enrich the story, but it wasn't. They just dropped it. And the whole thing was actually pointless because apparently there was a timer. Had you just sat down at the table and ate some food, the same result would have happened because in 30 minutes or whatever, poop, you go back to your body. Maybe it's not exactly how it works, but that's the way it felt after the story. What was the point except to make us suffer? And again, Mr. Sadist, do not appreciate it. Um, but that's not even the end of it. When you go all the way around the story and you come back to Garlemald, you are again forced to play other characters. Um, Alphino or Alfie Toad and Alize or Ali Toad. I failed that one twice. Now I play a healer. The second time I played, I understood all the abilities. I still failed it on very easy. The third time, I don't know if you can stand in the bombs and intercept them and still be within the AoE, and that was the trick. I felt like I was missing some gameplay um, mechanic to having failed them very easy. But um, I was angry again, upset. It refused to believe that all these terrible things happen in one zone. It was beyond coincidence. Um, hold on. See, I'm all emotional again. Um, so there we go. I am excited for when my friends finish. Um, they're only a couple days behind me. The queue times obviously are a big problem. You know, if they get off of work too late, they can't log in. On the weekends, you have to log in before 10 a.m. Um, to beat the thousands of people in queue. And then, of course, there's always a chance of being kicked. Um, so I'm excited to be able to talk. I do my best to avoid spoilers, and I may not let them know this video goes up until after they finish, or tell them not to watch it. I'll let the slideshow play out. Um, But that's my commentary. I hope y'all have a good day. Hey, so I hate to sneak commentary all the way after the long silence, but I can see the slideshow is coming to an end. I again really want to thank the massive amount of people that go into creating an experience like this. Um, as much as gamers love to complain, um, even through that, um, I would never want to disrespect the people that were able to provide this experience for me and other players. And it was truly incredible. My life, my days were better off for the tiny number of people who made my experience worse. Um, I hope everyone has learned to make better choices. And um, while it may have discouraged me in the moment, that's all it lasted. Um, I hope others get the same fulfillment and takeaways. I don't know what you get when you skip, so I guess I'll have to ask the skippers what fulfillment do they get out of it. Probably more on the MMO gameplay side than the story, but I truly enjoyed it. Um, there are excellent topics buried in the way they tell the story, in a way to give the lessons without feeling like you're stuck in a classroom. So big kudos. Um, very thought-provoking, as well as enjoyable gameplay. Certainly combined, um, I will rate it the highest I've experienced. And I wrote stories for Wheel of Time Mud way back in the day. Um, I played WoW a lot. Um, WoW has more enjoyable gameplay experiences in PvP, particularly, and probably the style of WoW I enjoy more than Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is a lot more about position, cares less about your numbers, more one-hit kills mechanics, which I don't like. Battle reses for everything, which I don't like. But it's a different game, and so we'll have to take it differently. Anyway, I just wanted to squeeze something in. But if you've watched the whole thing, then you probably appreciate me or my experience, and I'm glad I got to share it with you. So I look forward to more. And when it's over, we'll say goodbye again. See you. Um, that was my screenshot folder of my journey through Final Fantasy XIV. So, um, thank you to all the people I've gotten to play with and my friends and anyone else who gets to experience this with me. So, as promised, goodbye, and I'll see y'all later.